Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome, friends, to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Steve Fielder here with you. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me a couple of weeks off to go out to the White River in Arkansas with my buddies out there and have a good week of coon hunting. And I'll try to tell you a little bit about that as we go along. But today, our guest is a fellow that I've wanted to get on the podcast for quite some time. And thanks to our mutual friend, Murray Reagan of Tennessee, I finally caught up with Peanut Scott. Peanut is hunting a nice English dog these days named Sniper. And we're going to talk with Peanut, talk about his experiences of once being a very successful walker man and changing horses kind of in midstream, so to speak. But we had a great week of hunting at the White River. Coon hunting was good, and of course I enjoyed it particularly because I got to spend several nights hunting with a young dog that I co-own with my partner Mark Miller, the plot dog we call Bearpin Fever, and I had only had a night here and there with Fever in the past, so he and I got to be buddies during the White River week and had a great time with that. I do want to tell you that this recording is being done, or at least our interview was done on the second day of our White River trip this year. And so without further ado, let's go right into the recording with Glen Peanut Scott. How you doing, Peanut?
I'm doing good, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you, and you've come over here today and had to endure all our gang out there telling war stories and all. And it's not a bad little place we got here, is it?
Man, I tell you, Steve, it's super nice. Y'all are blessed to be able to have a place like this to come to and stay while you hunt White River.
Yeah, it is. It's a total blessing, and this High Plains Waterfowl Lodge, really, and it's amazing what they've done with this place. It was an old store building.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and they've got it set up with bunk rooms and individual rooms and bunk beds in some rooms, and everywhere you look, though, there's ducks. I don't see any coon mounts around. They do have some exotic game mounts out there, and it's kind of set up like a big lodge that you'd go out west, maybe to hunt, big game or something.
Right.
But this duck hunting is king in this area. In fact, there's a sign here, I think it's in one of maybe the men's room, it says Stuttgart, Arkansas, duck and rice capital of the country.
And we're not far from Stuttgart.
That's right. But duck hunting, did you ever do any duck hunting?
Never have.
Yeah.
That's just one hobby I never took
right.
up.
Back in West Virginia, we used to walk along the creeks and jump shoot these wood ducks. They'd get up and we'd shoot them like shooting quail, and that was fun. But when I was a little kid, we lived in Charleston, Missouri. My dad was working at a plant where, we both know Ronnie Bone.
Oh, yeah.
And Ronnie's dad worked at the same plant where my dad did. And but that was the first. Sometimes the sky was part of this experience for me.
Right.
To come out, I don't see that at home where I am.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. So, but anyway, White River, everybody loves it. Some people hate it. My buddy came down from North Carolina. He said too much mud for him.
Man,
he would like it this year, though, wouldn't he?
Man, I tell you, Steve, this is one of my favorite places to hunt. I've hunted all over the central United States, and White River's probably my favorite place to come.
Well, I was talking to a fella, and he does podcasts again. I don't know whether I ought to mention his name or not. He told me, he said, Steve, we got to quit telling people about this White River. There's too many of them coming.
Well, I've been coming since, I think 2001 was my first year.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what year. Oh, yeah, let's see. I think it was 2010 was my first year. So this makes 14 years for me. But we used to stay over in a place called Maddox Bay in a cabin there for several years. And then you and I shared an experience about that luxury resort we stayed in. You stayed maybe one of the years that I was there. It was supposed to be a deer hunter's camp, but if it was a deer hunter, it was probably one of the first deer hunters in the state of Arkansas.
Well, I tell you, Steve, I hope I never have to stay at that place again. I guess I was thankful to have a roof over my head, but it just...
That's about what you had.
That's about all we had. That's about all we had.
And hoped it didn't rain real hard.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Good gracious.
Oh, man. But anyway, I've heard the term for years. People say, well, there's a good little coon hunter's motel there in one area. That means you don't turn down the bed. You just throw your sleeping bag on top.
Right.
Well, Peanut, it's great to have you and to talk to you, and we could just, chit-chat. I want to, before I get into really letting you tell your story, I remember when I went to PKC, and that was in 1998, and I had been with UKC prior to that for 16 years in home office. And I started meeting some of the PKC hunters, and especially around Aurora, around the World Hunt Time and all that, and I really just fell in love with those guys. I enjoyed it. It was a totally different experience. It was coon hunting, but it was a lot different than the UKC hunts, whatever. But when I was with UKC, sometimes on Saturday morning, I'd stand and I'd listen to those whining, and I don't, that's no reflection on UKC, but guys would come up, and everybody got cheated, and everybody got a bad guide, and everybody this and that, and, whining. I went to PKC, and I sit there in that tennis center, and hunters come in, how'd you do, Peanut? Got beat. Go get me a cup of coffee, sit down, talk, Oh, well, how'd you do? Well, I got lucky tonight,
Right.
And it was like, there wasn't seemed like that stress with it. It was just, and I don't know if that was passed on by Jarvis and his philosophy for the club or whatever, but I just found a free and easy experience of coon hunters getting together, hunters with hunters, enjoying themselves and all. Now, I realize things have changed some since those years. The whole dynamic of coon hunting has changed a whole lot since those days. But before we get in, I want to talk to you about your PKC experiences and all of that. Who's Peanut Scott? Where are you from? Tell us about yourself.
Well, Steve, I'm from Bass Springs, Tennessee, as you mentioned. I've been there my entire life. I'm within 5 miles of where I was born and raised. My wife's from Bass Springs. We've been married going on 38 years. Her name's Rhonda. Wonderful, wonderful lady. She's had to be in to put up with me. We got 2 boys. Daniel is my youngest son. Reggie is my oldest son. Reggie's married to Brittany Scott, and they had our first little my grandchild back July before last. So he's a little over a year old now, year and a half, getting close to a year and a half. And my youngest, they got engaged about a month ago.
Oh,
so
congratulations to them.
Thank you so much. God has blessed us so much, Steve, with, hey, we love those girls like they're ours.
Oh,
I mean, God couldn't have given my boys any better ladies to be with. And 2 boys that is just phenomenal. Never had a minute's trouble out of either one of them. I've just been truly blessed.
Right.
And we still live in Bass Springs. We live real close to Rhonda's mom. Her dad passed away a few years ago, and we live close to her mom, and got 44 acres, just a little small
great.
farm. But God's trueness, I'm retired now, and I get to go and do, as I can afford to. And I just love coon hunting. I've done it my whole life, and started when I was 9, and it's led me to where I'm at today.
Well, my brother recently retired as a minister. Now, you've been a minister How
yeah,
long now?
I'm still a
you
minister.
still?
Yeah.
Do you have a church? Do you pastor a church? Or
No,
do you do?
I fill in. I supply.
I got you.
Fill in for preachers out of town
That's
or
what my
sick
brother-
or things like that. And I tell you, Steve, I've pastored 3 churches since I was called to preach in '95.
Okay.
And I've pastored 3 churches from then until now than anything I've ever done.
Well, that's
You know, I get to see so many different people. I may be at this church this Sunday, another church the next Sunday, and so on. And I love meeting different people and going different places. And God He's blessed my ministry.
Sure.
And I'm just thankful to still be able to do it.
Well, you bet. Well, you know, I think my listeners know where I stand as far as my faith. I don't try to preach to them too much on here. Every once in a while, I'll slide a little something that maybe the Lord laid on my heart. But my faith is very important to me, and I know it is to you,
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
Sure.
He was a deer hunter and a rabbit hunter. Had beagles, and he also had fox dogs. He fox hunted. But when I was growing up, there was 3 stores within a mile of my house. And I would go to these stores in the summer when I was out of school and just listen to the older guys talk about their hunting experiences. And there was a guy that lived right down the road from us, about a mile from Mom and Dad. His name was Lloyd Johnson. He's still around. I still see him at the store from time to time. He was a coon hunter. And I would listen to his stories at the store, and it just intrigued me. He would talk about the dogs fighting the coon and this, that, and the other. Well, you never got to see any of that with beagles or fox dogs. So I got on him about wanting him to come and pick me up and take me hunting sometime. And some time went by, and I just stayed on him. And he finally, one night, he pulled in the driveway, and Dad went to the door. And he came into the room. I think I was in my bedroom doing something. I may be doing homework or whatever. And he said, "Lloyd's out here wanting to know if you want to go coon hunting." Man, I went to throwing clothes on. And Steve, it was snowing so hard you couldn't hardly see the ground. And Dad said, "You sure you want to go out in this?" I said, "I want to go." So I went with him. He had a little walker dog called Mac, and he called Mac. And he treated 2 coons that night.
Oh,
and
boy.
I was instantly hooked. And I hunted with Lloyd for about 2 years before Dad ever bought me a pup. And he bought me my first pup, was English, only English I'd ever owned before Sniper. And it was just back then, Dad didn't want a coon hunter. He just went and bought a puppy. So anyway, I named her Fanny, and Lloyd helped me train her, and she turned out to be a pretty good dog. That was before I couldn't afford to lay the track, and night after night after night, I'd have to leave her, and Dad would come in from work the next day, and we'd have to load up and go try to find Fanny because she'd ran a deer somewhere, and we couldn't catch her. And anyway, I hunted her until, 5 or 6 years. She got ran over and messed one of her back legs up, and we had to end up taking it off.
Oh, boy.
Taking her back leg off. And so I sold her to a pleasure hunter, and then I started hunting walker dogs. But I got to take her to the first world hunt I ever went to, 1979, Norwalk, Ohio. It was the ACHA.
Oh, okay.
Around home, there wasn't much UKC. It was mainly ACHA. So I went to Norwalk, Ohio, one cast while I was up there. But, man, it was the experience of my life.
Well, that ACHA World Hunt was the hunt.
It was
of all hunts at that time.
Yes, sir. That was before PKC ever came along. Yeah, and we didn't have much UKC around us at the time. And the ACHA World Hunt, that was top of the ladder, around my place.
Sure. Well, I think it was all across the country. I've said many times, American Cooner magazine, because I always had the World Hunt winner on the front. That red magazine with that black and white picture in the middle. And you get up there in that Ohio country, you're getting up there in the fast lane back in those days. Ed Bates, for instance, Bert Noni up there.
Ed won it the year that I went.
Oh, did he?
He sure did. 1979.
Yeah, you reaching back there.
I've still got the little folder or whatever you want to call it with Mr. Ed and Speck on the front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Morris Hardy that's here hunting with us, and of course I've had Morris on on the podcast and all. He and Ed were good friends and are still.
Right.
And Ed and Scott used to come down here, I think so.
And some time with Mr. Ed and Scott both at the World Hunt this past year.
Yeah.
And man, they're top notch.
They
I think
are.
the world of both of them.
Absolutely. And I didn't really know Scott. When I went to UKC, Ed was very active in the English Association. And he'd laugh probably if he heard me say this. They'd have the meetings. And boy, that was back in the days when it wasn't long after, UKC had, the English breed had broken out of the actually it's the other way around. The Walkers and the Blue Ticks came out of the English breed back in 46. But anyway, now this was in the 80s, that they were no longer going to allow the transfer of breed between the Walker dogs and the Blue Ticks and the English. Because for many years after the English and Blue Ticks separated, I keep saying English, the English was the breed, okay? And then they had the Treeing Walkers within the English breed and the Blue Ticks. They both separated out into their own breeds. So now the English people, if they had a dog, or let's say a Walker man had a dog that was a good tricolored dog or something, maybe he was ticked the English, and that was permissible. Or maybe you got a litter of pups or the blue tick breed, and maybe some red tick pups come out of that litter, you were able to transfer that back into the English breed. And that was permissible for several years. When Fred Miller came along in 1973 and bought UKC, he said, we're going to put a stop to this. Well, that wasn't a popular decision.
I bet.
By any means. And Mr. Bates, he would get in there. He's a pretty good politician. Yeah, I can remember him involved in those discussions and all, But, that's all part of the history, of the breeds. But the English breed has always been kind of more open and accepting, of the various colors and all that stuff.
Right.
But anyway, I remember, that's getting down a rabbit path, but I remember some of those meetings, but yeah, it was a man back in the day. Speck was a Walker dog, made Grand Night champion. They transferred him into English breed. They made it again. So
I never got to hunt with Speck, but I've heard a lot of stories about him.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, so you went to Norwalk to the World Hunt. That was
I think I was 17.
Yeah.
I was born in 62. I'm 61 now. And I think I was 17 when I went to Norwalk.
Well, if it gives you any comfort, in 1962, I was a sophomore in high school.
Wow.
64 was my graduating year. All right, well, of course, I think most people, or I did, when I first met you, of course, was through PKC.
Right.
And you were hunting the Willie dog.
Right.
What's the background, or how did you get to Willie, and talk about Willie?
Okay. Well, I had a buddy, James Montgomery, that I pleasure hunted some with, and he had bought a little female at the St. Jude hunt at Parsons, Tennessee, from a man named Jimmy Lambert from Louisiana. And I thought she was one of the prettiest females that I had ever looked at. Her name was Annie. And James brought her home and hunted her for about a couple of weeks, and she was the deer runningest thing you've ever seen in your life. And James was just a pleasure hunter, and he didn't want that at all. So me and Avery may have been the one that called me and said, hey, I think James wanting to sell Annie. And I said, really? And he said, yeah.
Is this Avery Bell?
Avery Bell, yeah. Me and Avery's been buddies our whole lives. I'm older than him, but me and him's been real close our whole life.
I'm going to interrupt you. What was that little female he was hunting that one day in the Super Stakes? He wore them out one year at a roar.
Oh, Lord.
He had...
Lloyd C. Morris owned her. I remember she scored 900 and something in the final cast, if I'm not mistaken. I cannot think of her name. I can see her just as plain as day, but I cannot think of her name.
Okay, well, let's just remember that night very well. I was doing play-by-play on the computer there at the tennis center, and I mean, she was putting on a clinic.
She was.
Well, go ahead.
So anyway, long story short, me and Avery ended up buying Annie together, and Avery told me when we bought her, he said, "Now you'll have to keep her and hunt her. You have to keep her at your house and hunt her. I don't remember what he was hunting at the time. May have been Clyde. Him and Billy owned Wild Clyde, and of course he had a female out of Clyde named Ugg that they were hunting. So anyway, he said, you'll have to keep her at your house and hunt her. Well, I got to working on her for junk and slowed her down a lot. And she was the type of dog, Steve, if you hunted her in a lot of coons, she would flat demolish you. I mean, she was quick on both ends, just a super nice female, especially if you had her in thick coons. And anyway, me and Avery had decided we wanted to breed her. And at the time, I was looking at Hardwood Henry that Jeff Ricklets hunted.
Yeah.
He was winning everything.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere he went, Jeff was winning with him. And me and Mike had went to the, I know you don't hear much about NKC, but we went to the NKC World Hunt. And I was hunting Annie, and Mike was hunting, I think, Trey, a little female that they had called Trey. And anyway, Jeff was there, and we went out and looked at Henry and talked to Jeff about him and this, that, and the other. And the main thing that I was wanting when we bred her was to breed her to a solid, absolute coon dog. I didn't want no junk running, no possum treeing, no anything like that. I wanted something to offset. Annie's weaknesses.
Right.
And anyway, I sort of set my mind on Henry. I wasn't 100% on him, but that's who I was wanting, to breed to. And Avery so happened he had a breeding to moose. He had a free breeding to moose. He had bred a female and she didn't stick, and he had a free breeding.
Now, let's qualify, because a lot of our listeners don't know. Moose was Wipeout Zach.
That's right.
But it's Tommy McQueen and Mike Ferguson.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Wipeout Zach, which we all know is Moose.
Right.
That was his kennel name.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we ended up breeding Annie to Moose, and she had a shed, the puppies. It was for a week.
Wow.
And anyway,
that's cold in Tennessee, isn't it?
Oh, it was terrible. It was one of the worst weeks we probably ever had as far as temperature goes.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I went out to check on these puppies, or check on Annie to see if she'd had any puppies, and she had 11. So it seemed like all of them were doing good. Well, I go back in the house after I've stayed out there for a little bit, and I go out there before I start to go to bed. I go check on them again. Well, when I go out there the next time, 3 of them are dead. They had gotten far enough away from her, even with a heat lamp on them, that 3 of them had died. So I ran back in the house and told Rhonda, I said, get a quilt, blanket, or something and put down in the living room floor. I said, we're going to bring the puppies in. So I brought Annie and the puppies in, and they stayed in my living room floor for 3 weeks. The weather just it was just miserable cold, and I didn't want to lose any more. So anyway, they stayed in the house for 3 weeks till I felt comfortable to move them back outside where I didn't think they would, freeze to death or anything happened to them. So we raised 8, and Willie came out of that litter.
Right.
And Peaches, that Billy Bell hunted, was a litter mate.
Carolina
Peach. Clifton Crosby.
Big winner.
Yeah, yes, real big. I think she won like $74,000. She won a truck.
Yeah.
Clifton Crosby got one of the males. His name was Chopper.
Yeah.
He was 3rd in the state of Arkansas there for a while. Done a lot of winning in Arkansas. Wayne Allsbrooks, he may have had the best one of the bunch, a little female. She died of a brain tumor. I think she was 16 or 18 months old. He already had a handler ticket, one with her, and a truck ticket, and she died of a brain tumor. But anyway, that's where Willie came from. And I've told a lot of people, Steve, that you don't really know I guess you would say, like Michael Jordan's on a different level in basketball from all the other players.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never been with a dog like Willie before in my life. I'd never hunted with a dog of that caliber. But Willie, I guess you would say, put me on the map. he was just an exceptional hound. That whole litter was. I mean, it was just a phenomenal litter. The litter actually won me an Avery Litter of the Year for that litter of pups. But yeah, Willie was. But now he was a typical wipeout dog. On the start, he would run anything that breathed. As Barry would say, if it had blood in it, he would run it. And I was hunting him with an older female named Molly, and she was just a pure coon dog. And she was treeing 2 to 3 coons a night, and Willie wouldn't even be at a tree. He'd be off running a deer or a coyote or a fox, something. And the first, I can still take you to the tree that he treed his first coon up. We turned the dogs loose one night. Molly, there was a boy that went to school with my oldest son. Reggie had came in and said, Michael's wanting to go hunting with us tonight. Him and his dad are wanting to go hunting with us tonight. So they brought a pup over, and we go turn the dogs loose, and they go off the hill and up a hill, and Molly strikes, and Willie strikes with her. And they go over hill, Molly comes treed. Well, I hear another dog in there occasionally barking at the tree, and I thought, I'll ask Mike. I said, is that your dog? Is that your pup? He said, I don't think so. So we get in there, and Willie was there. And he was barking a little bit at the tree. He was just milling around and barking here and there, but he was at the tree. First time he'd ever even been in a tree. And so we shoot that coon out to him, and we take them and turn them loose again. And they go off the hill, and as soon as they get to the bottom of the hill, I think they just ran right up on a couple of coons because they struck, and Molly went to the right, run it probably 150, 200 yards, and just exploded on a tree. And of course, I'm running wide open trying to get to him, before he leaves. But little did I know he wasn't going anywhere. And I shot that coon out to him, and from that night forward, it was just like you've heard the old saying, flipping a switch.
Yeah.
He flipped a switch.
Yeah.
And
how old was he at that?
He was 7 months old.
Yeah.
And I immediately started hunting him by himself. And man, he just kept getting better and better and better and better.
Anything like it, is it to having
my passion? Just something about sitting to winning 2 trucks.
Right.
Well,
I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast and others out there probably think, well, these guys that run these, money hunts and these, what I call the mainstream of coon hunting. Josh Michaelis has now come out with this cane stream, he calls it, where they're this Supreme Handler Series thing and all. But they look at these guys and think, these are guys that are just, they happen to be able to buy a great dog or whatever, and that's why they're winning these big hunts and stuff. But a lot of the guys, especially your age and my age and all, it's a down deep inside hound gene. I guess that's what I'm grasping for straws. But it's there, and if you have it, and when you see a dog progress and do what God intended him to do, I don't know what God thinks all the time. He gives us the Bible, and if we read it regularly, we get the mind of God. But I think he said, I'm just going to make something to give these guys something special here to interact with. It's going to be cool, but to me, it's just either you got that down deep inside or you don't.
Right. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like you were saying, Steve, I have not been fortunate enough to have the money to go out and buy that caliber of a dog.
Very few do in this age.
Yeah. I mean, I have always raised and trained my own, and I hunt by myself 95% of the time. When I hunt, I want to know everything there is to know about that dog.
Yeah.
And Willie was one of those that I could tell you if he was in cut over timber, I could tell you if he was in water, I could tell you anything about him. I was telling the guys out there a while ago, and you may have been out there, I'm going to say for 3 years, I spent more time with Willie than I did my wife.
Yeah, I heard you say that.
I mean, it was just, I hunted every night, even Sunday nights. A lot of times I would go after church, late. My wife would tell you, I used to come in, take a shower, and go to work. I would hunt all night. Now I hunt 2-3 hours and I'm done.
Oh, yeah.
But then I couldn't get enough of it. And Willie, when you got a dog like that, it makes you want to go more.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when you see him progressing night after night, I used to pull up where some of my buddies would be pleasure hunting and just see what he would do. He never went to another dog, Steve. You cut him loose with dogs treed 2 or 3 different places. He would go right past them or beside them or around them or whatever and go tree a coon. And I'd never had a dog like that. And I'd had some pretty good dogs, you know, but nothing on Willie's level.
Yeah.
And, you know, he speaks for himself at what he'd won. He'd won $74,000 at 3-year-old.
Yeah.
So, you know, at that time, I think, I'm not sure about this, but I think as a 3-year-old, he had won more money than any dog at 3-year-old.
At 3-year-old.
Yeah. Now, there was 6 or 7 dogs ahead of him in the all-time money winning. But I think at 3-year-old, he had won the most.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one other dog that ever won 2 trucks back to back. That was Ashley Hopkins with Sunrise.
Right.
You know, Willie won 2 back to back. And, you know, it just, those kind of dogs are special in their own way. Now, I've had dogs that I've really thought a lot of, but when you spend 3 years in the woods with a dog 6 nights a week on average, I mean, you can't help but feel something a little more special about that animal.
You're speaking to something that's down deep inside of me, too. I live in Florida. It's not a good place to coon hunt. Wintertime right now is pretty good down there, but summertime, forget it. I don't even try it.
Yeah.
It's too hot, too snaky, alligators, all that mess. I mean, it's thick. But I come up here every year, and I love the fellowship. I love these guys like brothers. We have a great time. We eat way too much. We have a lot of fun. But when it gets dark, down deep in me, I want to go hunt my dog by myself.
Absolutely.
I'll confess to that.
Absolutely.
And they don't always understand that, you know, the guys. But a pack hunt, buddy hunt, that ain't me.
That ain't me either, Steve.
When I was in Michigan, all those years I worked for the registries, and I was with PKC part of the time I was there. I hunted all the time, but I had great hunting everywhere. But I could just go, you know, and if I wanted to come back and watch the news, I could. Or if I wanted to hunt till 2 o'clock, I would. But now that's ingrained in us, Pete.
Right.
You know, and that's just like I've got this young plot dog now, and these guys. I told the boys this morning. I said he's living rent free in your head. Trey was giving me fit. How come he can treat 3 coon any here? I said, you know, but I love to hunt a dog by itself.
Oh, I do too.
Now, the sad ending to that story is I'm getting too old to do that. Really shouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to be out there some by myself this week.
Yeah.
Because that's what I love to do.
Well, you know, I came and hunted over here 2 nights last week. I came by myself, hunted by myself. And I'm going to hunt tonight and tomorrow night by myself.
Yeah.
You know, when I've got a dog that I'm not going. I don't guess you could call it pushing into hunts anymore because I don't hunt open hunts much anymore. I just go to the pro classics and some of the bigger hunts. I want to know if I get beat, I don't want it to be my fault that I got beat.
Oh yeah.
You know, I want to know everything about the dog I'm hunting.
Right.
And you know, that's just why if you're out there with a buddy, 1, 2, 3, you're not going to be able to listen to that dog because people are going to be talking. You're going to be talking to each other and this, that, and other. And you may have missed something on this track that he ran that you really should have heard.
Yeah.
You know, so now when I get older, you know, my dog gets older, I may feel different.
Well,
about
I'm
it,
going to bet that you're going to enjoy being with your buddies and doing all that stuff. But when it gets dark, you're going to want to be out there one-on-one with that hound.
Exactly.
I know you are because I feel that myself.
Yeah,
it's
just something I just can't help it. I've just always had a passion to follow a young dog and watch him progress. And I just feel like if somebody else is out there and there's other dogs out there, I can't learn him as good as I need to learn him.
Well, it's frustrating kind of to me when I go out with a lot of guys, new coon hunters. I get I get guys complain about when I say something about young hunters. They say, well, you're talking down to young hunters. No, don't mean that at all. But the first thing, they got that screen right there in their face, and they're not even hearing that dog bark, listen to him where he's, if he's on the track or if he's checking the tree or, is he really right or is he giving me that one little squeal or whatever in his locate that lets me know he's got it. I mean, it could be a dozen things, but you can miss all that if you concentrate too much on the technology.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
but God, gave us the technology, and I'm thankful for it. Don't mistake me, but I just think.
I think when Jarvis come up with the idea of PKC, I think the idea was for the best dog and the best handler as a combination. That's who they wanted to win. The dog that was the best dog and the best handler. And now, I'm like you, these hunts I go on now, I was a big proponent against having Garmins and being able to use them in the hunt.
Yes.
Because I think that takes away from what Jarvis intended for this to be. I think he intended it to be the best hound and handler. And I think if you've got everybody out there standing and looking at a Garmin, some of them don't even know when their dog is treed.
Right.
Then you take that aspect away.
Sure.
I know I'm going to catch slack over this because there's so many guys and big winners now that absolutely want to be able to use the Garmin. But I just think it's a tool. I'm not saying it's not a necessary tool to use, especially when you're pleasure hunting, because there's so many training capabilities you have that we didn't used to have.
Oh yeah.
You can stop a dog from running junk. You can look at him and see if he's standing on his head, if you need to go in there and get him and move him or whatever you need to do. Now I'm thankful for that part of the Garmin, but I still think that in a hunt, it should be the best hound and handler combined without any technology.
Well, you think about that, Peanut, and I'm old school, but you're out there on the hunt and you're hearing those alarms going off all the time, beep, 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 and, it absolutely gives you the advantage that we never had back
absolutely.
when you were hunting Willie or back.
And a thing, it gives a guy, you're not ever going to convince me that there ain't guys that have the judge to, he's treed right through there. Just listen. You're looking, he's treed because you're looking at your Garmin.
Yeah.
But I feel like that people have been persuaded to go to a hound that they never heard because the handler convinced them. That they're hearing their dog.
Well, and then, the comeback will always be, well, we need it for the safety of the dog. We got to know when the dog's going on the road or if he's on property he's not supposed to be on, or that guy ran me out of there last Saturday night.
Well, Steve, let me interrupt you just a minute.
No, go ahead.
To me, the dogs of today, when you cut 4 dogs loose today in a pro hunt or in one of the big pro sport truck hunts, those 4 dogs are going to leave in 4 different directions.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to be half a mile in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
How in the world are you going to get back to the truck and get around if your dog is on the road before he gets ran over?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't buy the safety thing.
Yeah.
I really don't. Because there's just no way that if your dog gets on, the way these dogs go today, if your dog gets on a road, it would be impossible for you to get back to your truck, drive around to where that dog's at before he gets ran over.
It's kind of reminds me of the fact it's gun control argument. People say, well, you got the police. You don't need your own weapon to protect your house. You got the police. How, the guy's busting down your front door and you're going to call 911 and wait 30 minutes till he gets there?
If you lived where I live, Steve, I mean, they would have your house, you killed and your house, everything in your house gone before the police ever got there.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I live I'm 30 miles from the closest Walmart. So I am in the sticks. I'm way
good
out
for
in
you.
the state.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the way I've lived my entire life.
Awesome.
You know, so that's the way I prefer to live.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't blame you at all. Well, okay. We've been at it here about 40 minutes. I want to talk about what on earth persuaded you, after having a dog like Willie, win 2 trucks, $70-some thousand, top of the coonhound world there, you hunt an English dog now. How in the world did that happen?
Steve, you're not the first person that's asked me this. I believe that God has a hand in everything. When I went to looking for a pup, I wanted a pup for the upcoming spring super stakes, baby stakes. And there was a guy that lived within 30 miles of me that had a litter of Wipeout pups they were born about, I think, the end of May, something like that, and a Wipeout pup. And so I called the boy and I told him that I wanted a pup. And I said, when they get big enough to start getting around where you can tell a little bit about them, I said, call me. I'd like to come up and look at them and pick me one out. And he said, okay. So he calls me Saturday, and the boy that actually owned the female wasn't there, but his dad was there. And I said, no, any pups that I can't pick from, get them out of the pen so I don't pick anybody else's pup. So he gets them out, and I go in the pen and pick me a pup out. We take pictures of it. Me and my wife were holding it in our arms and this, that, and the other. And I gave him $100 deposit, and I said, call me when they get 6 weeks old, and I'll come pick him up. Well, 6 weeks goes by, or 3 more. I said, Will's calling me to come get my pup. So minutes, and he never mentions the puppies. And I said, well, I guess you're calling me to come get my pup. And he said, got a little bad news. And I'm thinking, man, my puppy's died. And I said, did my puppy die? And he said, no. He said, the guy that owns the daddy has decided he wants the pup that you've picked. And I said, say what? And it sort of agitated me a little bit. It didn't make me mad, but it agitated me. And I said, I'll tell you what, just send me my $100 back, and I'll find me a pup somewhere else. Well, he did. He sent me my $100 back. And he even went as far as to try to give me his pup. And anyway, I looked and looked and looked to try to find another Wipeout litter of pups, and there wasn't any. There just wasn't none. So I knew Larry Jordan, friend of mine that lives at Mercer, Tennessee. Him and Murray are good friends.
Murray Reagan. And his name was Larry Jordan. I knew he had bred his female show out to Vapor. So I called him, and I said, Larry, you got any of those pups? They were about 3 weeks younger than the Wipeout pups. So at this time, they were about 3 weeks old. I said, you got any of those Vapor pups, Vapor show out pups left? And before he even said anything, he said, are you going to hunt an English dog? And I said, well, I don't know that I want to. I said, but I may not have no other choice. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll make sure you get one if you want one. I said, well, can we come look at him? And he said, yeah. So we go up and look at them, and they come out of the pen, and man, Sniper just stood out from the rest of them. And I told Larry, I said, if I can have that one right there, I said, I'll buy one from you. He said, he's yours. So I went back and picked him up when they were weaned and brought him to the house, and basically the rest is history. I'll never forget this. We were sitting out on the porch. We'd had him about 2 weeks on a porch watching him. And I'm just ain't paying a whole lot of attention to him. And Rhonda just all of a sudden says, that's the smartest puppy that's ever been on this place. And I looked at her like, do what? She said, that's the smartest puppy that's ever been on this place. And I said, you do know we raised Willie here, right? And she said, that's the smartest puppy that's ever been on this place. She saw something in this pup that I didn't even see. And anyway, goes on there, and he gets about a little over 3.5 months old. And I had a little mountain cur female there. I squirrel hunt also with dogs. Yeah. House, I'd always take pups to just
let them get used to crossing branches. There's some old net wire fences they can get through and treetops blowed down. And that's where I take all of my pups just to start walking them.
Yeah.
I take them up there in the back of the side-by-side, and I open my tailgate on the side-by-side, and Sniper comes out of the back of this thing like he's an old dog. And he tears out down the old woods road that I'm parked in, and he's gone about 2 or 3 minutes, and he loads up on a tree. I'm talking about, Steve, it wasn't no milling. He went on a tree like he'd been doing it his whole life. And
3.5 months old.
And I go down there to him, and he has got this tree bear hugged and treeing every breath. And I get to looking around, shaking bushes and stuff like that, and a squirrel runs out of the top of it. I'm thinking, good God, what have I got? And so anyway, I'm so ecstatic. I just put him on the leash, lead him back, and go home. I'd never had one to do that before.
Yeah.
So I go back up there the next day, and he does the same thing. I turn him out the same spot. He goes down the same road, and probably within 100 yards of the tree treated in the first day, he does the same thing again. I go down there to him, and this time there's a big vine going up the tree, and he's got the top. He trees 2 squirrels, does the same thing. Now, I'm telling you, this pup is just like he has been doing it forever. So I go back home, and I tell my wife, I said, I'm fixing to take him down by our church tonight. There were some cut cornfields down there, and I said, I'm just going to walk him around those cornfields, see if I can walk him over a coon. I get him out of the truck. I lead him out there about 10 yards. I unsnap him, and Steve God is my witness. He takes off like a 5-year-old dog down this corn road. He's gone about, 250 yards, maybe something like that. He opens in the cornfield. He trails. I still got the video of him from the first coon he ever treed. And I'm thinking, he's run up on a possum down there in that cornfield. Well, I go down there to him, squall one time, the coon looks right at me. He's got a big boar coon treed. And I shoot the coon out. He comes over there, fights the coon. Well, I shoot him out dead, but he comes over there, fights the coon a little bit. And he like 5 days being 4 months old. And he was consistently treeing coons from that night forward. It seemed like every night, I'd like to drove Billy Bell crazy. I would send him a video every night and call him or something, telling him he was treeing coons. And in Bass Springs, Tennessee, Steve, that just don't happen a lot of times, even with an old dog.
Yeah.
And
there was one treed there one time, but he was just passing through, I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, he treed 92 singles from the first coon that he treed till he was a year old. I kept up with every one of them. He treed 92 singles. And where I live, that's unheard of. I mean, that's unheard of. I'd say there's a lot of grown dogs that couldn't do that. And he was the easiest dog in the world to break. He only ran 2 deer in his life. He only treated 2 possums. He was completely broke at 5 months old. He would not bark at nothing but a coon at 5 months old. He's the only dog I ever had that was born a coon dog.
Yeah, and you too, you imprinted him by, hunting him. But what we talked about earlier, hunting him by himself, you out there, you and him out there doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Time after time. And you said that 90-some coons he treated by a year old or something.
By a year old.
You have imprinted coon on that pup's brain. That's all he knows.
Right. And still to this day, he will not bark at nothing but a coon.
Yeah.
And he's been 100 from day one. There's been a few times that if he wasn't doing something, he would try to come into a tree to another dog when I did hunt with another dog, and I broke him from that pretty quick. Mm-hmm. He was naturally independent and natural. I never had to walk him, not a night in his life. I've never had to walk him. You turn him loose, he goes hunting.
Yeah.
And he's just a phenomenal. He was phenomenal.
Well, we call it being a natural.
That's exactly what he is.
And they use that term in baseball and all about some of these kids. But it's amazing when you see one like that, and they don't come around every day.
I've been hunting 52 years, and he's the only one I ever had.
Yeah.
Willie wasn't a natural. I mean, Willie would run anything that laid a track. And, Willie, when he became a coon dog, he was a coon dog till he died. But this pup was born a coon dog, absolutely born a coon dog.
Well, Here's a question for you, kind of. Has he made an Englishman for life out of you?
That's all I'll ever hunt is his offspring, him and his offspring from now on. I'm too old to, Steve, if you've hunted 52 years and a dog of this caliber comes along once in your life, why would you want to go back to anything else? Now, listen, I'm not saying there's not walker dogs out there better than him. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But I will say this. When you pull up to a hunt with an off-colored dog, he better operate like a walker dog. And I tell everybody that. If you're going to win with an off-colored dog, he has to operate like a walker dog. He has to do it quick. Sniper's not a dog that's going to strike a track and trail it for an hour and tree it. A walker dog have 2 or 3 coons treed time he does that.
Yeah.
And most English dogs that I'm accustomed to hunting with, they strike a track and they trail and they trail and they trail, and they'll eventually tree the coon and they'll eventually have it. But a walker dog's going to treat 2 or 3 coons.
Proclaim myself to be the historian of coon hunting, but I've studied coon hunting for all my life. That Walker family and those boys in Kentucky and all that bred the Walker foxhound, they laid the foundation for why the walker dog is so popular today.
Absolutely.
Because they built that speed into them. They went to all kinds of lengths to try to come up with that dog that could run that red fox to ground. They were used to running those gray fox, but when the imported red fox came to this country and started migrating through and it come into Kentucky, they wanted to run that fox until he went in a hole.
Yeah.
Or they caught him on the ground, one or the other. And they got dogs from Ireland. They inbred their dogs till they were coming up blind and deaf and all these things. And they found that the legend is, and I believe it's true, that dog out of Tennessee called Tennessee Lead, that they stole him out of this was before Billy Ledbetter's dog.
Oh, okay.
This was a
different
black
Tennessee
and
Lead.
tan kind of looking dog. The story is they stole him out back to Kentucky, and he had that speed and that drive and everything. They began to breed their bitches to him, and that's how they developed that Walker foxhound. But all that big long story is to say, that's why when the competition game started, back in the 50s. And see, I grew up with that. Well, actually, it was the 40s, but I was born in 1946.
Yeah.
And I was just a kid when a lot of this stuff was developing, and that quickness, that quick on strike, that running that track, getting to the tree first. Now, they had to work on the tree a little bit in those early walker dogs. Not all of them would tree. And they had to break them off a lot of stuff. But that's why the walker dog became popular. And you hit the nail on the head. That walker style is what you've got to have.
You got to have it.
Yeah.
You got to have it, Steve. I don't take anything. Hey, that's what I've hunted my whole life. That's why I went to a walker dog, is because of the quickness. I seen in the hunts what it took to win. You got to have independence. You got to have quickness as one of your main ingredients, and accuracy.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have those 3 things, you better stay away from these big hunts.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm telling you, better stay away from them.
Yeah, I sit back and watch the videos and age, minute or 2 left. Hey,
they can cover 500 yards in a couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah.
The best way I know to say it is, and I've told everybody, if you have an off-colored dog, he better operate with a walker style.
Right.
Or there's no sense of going to these bigger hunts.
We were talking last night, I think it was, and the name came up of a blue dog years ago in the Purina race when I was at UKC, when the Purina Award for the Outstanding Coonhound was the big fall winner. For instance, Paul Sheffield in Georgia won it twice with Hardwood Dan. There was different ones. But there was a blue dog, and the words came up in this discussion last night that he hunted and ran a coon like a walker dog.
Absolutely.
And that was the Blue Run Gentleman dog that Tom Bradley over in Virginia had. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What you're talking about.
Yeah. I went to a pro sport hunt, one of the $4,000 entry fee hunts that they have back in March and Sniper was the only off-color dog there.
Yeah.
You know, and I won my first cast, won the 4,000 back. But it's just, you know, and I'm not taking anything away from the English breed, but I'm going to say this. If Sniper can produce his likeness, I honestly think he's going to change the English breed.
Yeah.
You know, now some guys may not like that. They may not want it changed.
Right.
But if you want to see more off-colored dogs at these bigger hunts, we're going to have to come up with something in the English breed that will allow you to be able to go to those.
All right. I know you're going to be hunting him by himself tonight, but let's just say, for the sake of supposition, as they say, I'm going to go out there with you tonight, and you're going to unsnap Sniper. What am I going to see?
Well, first thing you're going to see is he's going to throw rocks in your face when you cut him loose. He leaves like he's shot out of a cannon. Matter of fact, Murray, before Murray ever bought half of him, we were hunting on the river one night, turning him loose on the banks, hunting out of the boat. And he took off and he throwed sand all in Murray's eyes. And Murray, he reminds me of that quite a few times. Literally, he leaves that way. And he recuts from a tree the same way. He don't care what anything else is doing. You can cut him, you can pull him off of his tree. Dogs treat everywhere, and he's going to tree another coon. And he's going to tree him until you put him in the box. I mean, that's just the way he is. I'm not bragging on him. I'm just telling you the absolute facts.
Well, you mentioned that you were up over here last week hunting a couple of nights by yourself, and I think you said one night you treed 12.
He treed 12 the second night.
Yeah.
Yeah, he treed 5 the first night, and then he got across Green River on me, and it killed a lot of my time trying to get across, to find a way across to get him. And but the second night he treed 12, and I quit before midnight.
Okay. Different types of coon, cold tracks, hot tracks, or is he ambush? What kind of dog is he, man?
Well, I will say this. He's not an ambush style dog, but he's not going to bark on a track that's going to take him 45 minutes to tree. He'll never open on that track.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because he's smart enough to know that he can't get it treed in a certain amount of time, or if he don't have the nose to smell that coon that's going to take 45 minutes to tree. Either way, he doesn't take a track, I guess you would say, as he comes to it, because if he did, he'd be striking more colder tracks. He doesn't strike tracks that's going to take him a long time to tree it. Most of his tracks are going to be, and he runs it to catch it. I mean, it's going to have to get somewhere.
Yeah.
When he strikes.
Good locate.
Unbelievable locate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
he's got a good locate. He's a every breath tree dog.
Yeah.
He does jack the tree some, but mainly he goes around the tree in a circle. But he'll never miss a bark. I mean, going around it or jacking it or whatever. He mainly runs around it. That's why I can't never get no real good videos of him treeing, because he won't stand still long enough.
Yeah, I get you.
But he's just a dog that when you cut him loose, he's going to tree a coon somewhere. Now, it may be a mile or a mile and a half, but he's going till he trees one. That's just the way he is. And it's cost me a few casts by him getting out of pocket. But he's just, where I live, Steve, a dog has to go hunting to tree a coon. I mean, we don't have a lot.
Have you and Murray considered, or have you ever bred him to another breed, female?
We have not. I've had a guy ask me, would I breed? He's got a Walker female and a good one. And I told him, certainly.
Yeah.
I don't care, what we breed him to. We've only bred 4 females so far. Only 2 litters of pups on the ground. Murray's female, JoJo. She is new. She is Thielen. Has got a really nice female out of JoJo and Vapor, which is a half-brother, half-sister cross. She's bred, and she's due January, about the first week of January, something like that. But we've only got 2 litters of pups on the ground right now. And I want to say this. I got a video this morning of one of them they're about 4.5 months old, his oldest litter. I've got a pup at the house that's out of the first litter. But one of his litter mates, there was only 4 in the first litter. She had 11, but 7 of them died. Got a video this morning of the female treeing. I knew she'd been treeing cats around this boy's house, but she actually ran and treed with his older dog last night on a coon.
Good deal. That's a good report on him.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, he's predominantly blue-ticked with describe him.
He's blue with red legs, red head.
Kind of more of a tricolored
I call him a
English.
tricolored. Yeah, he's a tricolored dog. He's a big dog. He weighs about 85, 90 pounds.
Oh, okay. Loud.
Pretty loud, yeah. Yeah, you don't have no trouble hearing him. Like I say, I think I told you in there a while ago, he at the Tournament of Champions regionals last year at Conway, Arkansas, I treated him at 1 mile 4/10. Now, I don't hurt him. The guy had hurt him enough that I could get him treed, and it won me the cast.
Yeah.
Of course, it's all flat ground over there at Conway, or where we were hunting anyway. We were hunting at Haskell, Arkansas, which is about an hour south of Conway. And but you can hear him a long way. Yeah.
And he's how old right now?
He was 3 in June.
Just 3.
Yeah, he was 3 in June. He's got 1 Super Stakes left.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he's a spring dog.
Well, you've done things in the coonhound world that a lot of guys that will be listening to this probably don't believe they could ever do or would aspire to do, and that's win not just 1 but 2 pickup trucks.
Steve, to win 1 that would have been enough for me. But the handler hunt came before the pup hunt, and so he was hunting against older dogs in the handler hunt. And I don't know. I had a feeling, even before we went down there, I had a feeling that if he could get a break or 2, he could possibly win it. I mean, he was that good. And it just so happened that things went my way. He looked unbelievable. I think we scored, it's around 1,100 plus we scored in the 3 casts, no minus. Now, I have to say this to my Brown of the first night. And, of course, Habit had won. He was winning everything.
Oh, yeah.
I think he ended up with 95,000 when he got killed.
Right.
I think he got killed. And but anyway, something told me if I could beat John, and no disrespect to the other dog in the cast, but if I thought if I could get by Habit, I could win it, and or Willie could win it. And that night the moon was bright. It was about 15 degrees, wind blowing 20, 30 mile an hour off the Mississippi River. I mean, it was cold. And Willie had 400 plus on 2 coons and 200 on a den. And Habit had, I think, 350 at circle. So Willie was the only dog on the cast that had plus. And I felt like he was, I thought to myself, I didn't tell nobody this, but I thought he was just on a different level than anything else that I was going to be hunting against.
Yeah. Habit was tough. I only hunted with him one night. It was on the final 4 at the PKC World. The Boz dog won it that year.
Right.
Habit was that large, and I thought, boy, he gets treed. He's got this thing. They had treed 1 in a den. They scored it. They got to see it and all. But, well, what is Sniper won so far?
He's won a little over 7,000 in PKC. Yeah. He's won 4,000 in Pro Sport, and he's won 2,000 in UKC. So around 13, between 12, 13,000, something like that.
And he's competitive, obviously.
Yeah.
So you got a dog there at 3 years old. You've got 3 or 4 real good years ahead of you with him.
I think so.
If he holds up his
I don't think he's even reached his prime yet, to be honest with you, Steve. I mean, I think he's still, Willie, I'm not going to say Willie was any better at 4-year-old than he was previously, but he started making things look easier. I think when a dog of this caliber gets older, it's not necessarily that they're better. They just start making things look easier. They learn how to tree a coon quicker. And things like they learn more of where to go to find the coon.
Of course they do.
The
good ones.
The good ones. And I think that helps a dog as far as becoming better because he has learned through mistakes, what to avoid, what not to do anymore. Yeah. And, I think Sniper's he's still got some learning to do as far as to get to that absolute, Selected him one time, and we did that before we ever bred him. I just, I wanted to do it just for my purpose in case something happened to him. I wanted to have a way that I could get a pup out of him. That's the only reason we collected him. Now, Murray and I have talked about, collecting him again, but right now we're live breeding him. We've live bred 4 females. I'm just hoping that it doesn't, that's what happened to Willie. We started breeding so many females after he won that second truck, and he got his mind on that instead of treeing a coon.
Sure.
And I'm just hoping that's not what happens to Sniper. It's what I'm hoping anyway.
That's a decision, or some of them. I guess there's some that doesn't affect, but most of males are affected by that.
Right. I mean, Murray's had some bad experiences with AI. I think he's went through 2 or 3 females that he AI'd that didn't have pups. And, there's a lot of expense to AI and a female, especially not to get a pup.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're looking at cost of travel to go to wherever the semen's stored or either have it shipped, to your vet or whatever. And a lot of vets don't even do that. So there's a lot of expense to AIing. And that's one reason so far we haven't went that route. But not to say we're not going to at some point. But we're offering him now for live breeding.
Yeah.
We've got, like I say, we've bred 4, and I've got some other guys that are just waiting on their females to come in to bring them to him. So.
Well, that's my partner and I on the plot dog. We collected him the other day, and the idea was we're not planning to try to breed him a lot, but just to have him, have it there for the future, and also not to mess his mind up, with females.
Right.
And we got 4 more wins. We need to be grand, and he finished second in the plot race this year with PKC, which that was pretty good.
Oh yeah.
And so we like him, but that's in there. Morris Hardy and Randy Smith, Mississippi Randy, I have to say, because my other buddy up in Pennsylvania, they got crappie, they got coleslaw, fries, all the trimmings. You cannot go in the finest seafood restaurant in the country and get a better meal. And I think it's about ready.
Oh my goodness, Steve! I didn't come to eat, but I sure will.
You need to. And
I will sure be glad to.
Is there anything that you thought we'd talk about, or you want to say, or anything that we haven't covered before we shut this thing down?
No. I do want to thank Murray for being the partner he's been. Knowledge of the English breed. I don't know a lot about the English breed because I've been a Walker man all my life.
Yeah.
But Murray is like an encyclopedia when it comes to the English breed, and that has helped me tremendously. Yeah. When people call about breeding or something, I can point them to Murray, and he can tell them anything that they need to know as far as bloodlines and stuff.
Sure.
I'm just a coon hunter that has lucked up, and God has blessed me with a good dog, and I'm just thankful to still be able to do it.
Well, I think there's something about knowing how to develop that talent. It's kind of like these coaches, You get a kid out in the inner city or whatever, maybe he's got all the natural talent in the world, but if he doesn't get that, well, that's what a good dog man does.
Well,
and you obviously are.
Steve, I have said this, and I don't mean anything by it. It's just a fact. You could take a world champion and give him to some guys, and they'd have him run in a week.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just that simple. God has had to give you a talent, and you learn by trial and error. Believe me, man. When of course, I've never had money to be able to go out and buy dogs. I've always had to raise my own, and I think it's made me a better dog man by having to do that, because there ain't nothing out there I ain't seen. I mean, I've seen it all. I've dealt with every kind of issue. Do this.
Yeah. Well, it's been a blessing to me and to our listeners, I'm sure, Peanut, to have you on the podcast this week, and I really appreciate you. I know you made the effort to make the drive over here about, 3.5 hours or so?
About 4.5.
4.5, yeah. So, beautiful day out there. It should be a good night tonight. That old moon's awful bright.
Yeah, it may be tough. It may be tough, especially on some young dogs.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was tough last night, and the one really good job my dog did last night, I thought, oh, boy, you really look good here, and it was a darn big old hotel, man.
Yeah.
They should have had a Hilton sign up on it.
It happens.
But, no, real joy to see you again, Peanut, first of all, and I've been following you on social media. And, of course, Murray, he taps in every once in a while. I've had Murray on a podcast before. In fact, across the road over there at the campground, we sat down in his camper one time and recorded.
When we talked about this, I was hoping that he could be here with me to do it together. Yeah. But JoJo's, like I say, she's not far from having pups, and he wanted to be back at home with her, and it just didn't work out. But I wanted Murray to be here for any bloodline.
Well, we'll bring him back, and we'll bring you back too, and you guys can just have a big old time talking English.
I see you, Steve. Man, we used to see each other at the PKC hunts all the time, and you've always been somebody I looked up to. So I just thank you for having me down here to do this.
Oh, well, it's my privilege.
I never dreamed in a million years that I'd ever be asked to do a podcast.
Oh, wow. Well, that's...
And this is the second one I've done. So I wouldn't have never dreamed about it.
Who'd you do with before?
Mason Bush.
Oh, okay. On the Coonhound University?
Well, it was when he was with the Hunting Dog Public.
Folks, if you need anything in the way of supplies for your dogs or your hunts, or you want apparel, coon hunting apparel, big game hunting, technical support for your electronics, they've got it all at W Hunting Supply, dusupply.com. Call Buddy or Jason or any of the fine folks out there, and they will take care of you, I guarantee. That's going to be it for the Gone to the Dogs podcast for this week. If somebody asks you, where's that old broken down coon hunter these days, tell him, well, that fool drove 1,200 miles in 2 days, coon hunted 2 nights, and he's here doing a podcast trying to keep his eyes open. But Fielder here, and I'm Gone to the Dogs.